want to talk a little bit today about God's wisdom. And I think it's a very important subject. And let's, to begin to start thinking about this subject, let's think for a moment about an architect. Obviously, I want to parallel this later to, God being the master architect. But let's just think about an architect for a minute. Now, an architect, if he's going to design a building like, say, a skyscraper, he is going to draw up some plans, some blueprints, and in those plans, he's going to have everything. He's going to have the walls, he's going to have the floor plans, he's going to have, everything that building is going to need, he's going to put in there. And one of the things that's going to be very crucial is he's going to need to put support structures in place inside the design. In other words, it'll be like beams or different, structures inside the building that kind of keep it from, falling down, basically. Keep it from, destruction. Keep it standing upright. And so that's going to be in those plans is the support structures. Now these support structures just keep the building standing. They're not a wall. They're not part of the floor. They're just keeping the building standing. They have just one purpose in there. Now, the ideal thing is, when you build your building, you follow the blueprints. You follow the architect's blueprints exactly. The architect knows how to design this so that you don't have any problems. Now, let's say that a contractor decides he's going to start building this skyscraper that was designed by the architect. He begins to, take the blueprint and he begins to start working on the building. Now, what happens if that contractor begins looking at what the architect did in the blueprints, and he begins to look at it and say, you know what, I like this, but these beams in the middle, these support structures, we're on a budget, we really need to try to cut corners where we can, and I know the architect meant well whenever he put this here, but I think we need to just build it without those support structures, and I think it'll be fine. And so he goes ahead and does that. The building goes up. There's no support structures in it, as the architect had designed. What's going to happen to that building? That's the question I want to ask today. Now, think of it. We're thinking of it, in the natural. What's going to happen to this building? What's eventually going to happen is, even though that contractor might be able to build the building, he might be able to, get the building up there, and it might stand and hold for a while. But the fact of the matter is that because he did not follow the architect's blueprints, he did not put the support structures in place where they needed to be because he was trying to do it his way, what's going to end up happening? That whole structure, one day, it might stand for a few days, it might stand for a few weeks or a few months, but one day that whole structure is just going to collapse in on itself because it didn't have the needed support structures. And, whenever we're going to parallel that to God being the master architect, whenever we understand that there's things in the Bible, such as thou shalt nots. There's like commandments, things that we, must stay away from, things that we must not do. God in all His wisdom, the master architect, He put that in His Word. He put that in the design of life, so that the commandments, the thou shalt nots, all of this stuff He's put there for us as support structures that we need to put in our design of our life, so that we don't do it our way, because when we do it our way, guess what happens? The support is going to collapse in on itself. Our life might stand for a while. In my case, I stood up without crumbling for 21 years. I did it my way for 21 years. I used drugs. I partied. I went and, every sin you can name imaginable, I was into it. I did things my way. Yeah, sure, I had teachers. I had, preachers come and try to talk to me. I had teachers. I had counselors. I had, everything you can imagine, people trying to tell me what to do, and I still wanted to do things my way. Well, guess what? At the age of 21 years old, my life collapsed in on itself. And thank God in His grace, He came to me, He picked up all the rubble, He picked up what was left of my life at that time, and He rebuilt it. And that's, I had a born-again experience. My whole life was changed, but I had to relearn God's wisdom. I had not relearn, I had to learn it. I had to understand the things that were going to destroy my life, and I also had to learn, what can I put in my life that'll keep my life from collapsing in on itself once again. And there's so much wisdom in God's word, and but I just want you to kind of meditate on that for a moment. Think of God as the master architect, and and I know some people watching this video might not understand the spiritual realm and all this different stuff yet, but there's an enemy of our soul out there, and his name is Satan, and he wants to be the contractor of our lives. The Bible talks about the schemes of the devil, doctrines of demons, all the different it also calls him the prince of the power of the air, the god of this world, and he's at work, and he's active with his philosophies and his schemes. And that's why we see, out in this world, all the chaos that we see. That's why we see people's lives get broken and falling apart. That's why we see people that are so lost and they don't know where to turn, because they're in this other reality. They've been given this other philosophy of life. In other words, Satan is the master is the contractor of this world, and he's going out and telling people how to build their lives without the support structures in place that are going to protect it. And he goes all the way back to Adam and Eve in the garden. There was a serpent in there, and it whispered to Eve. It says, "Has God said?" And that's the thing that we got to understand, is that voice is still echoing all the way from the garden. Has God said? Getting us to question, God's authority, God's wisdom, God's ways, and that's what's caused all the chaos in the world. And God had a plan in place, and he knew that the world was basically upside down. The world was separated from him because of sin. And his plan is, because the world is upside down, he wants to turn it right side up. And it causes a stir. But anyway, I'm going to kind of stop right there for this video. And now that we kind of have an understanding of why we need God's wisdom, why we need a support structure in place, we'll be able to get into some other teaching about God's wisdom in another video.